Let's talk about education. Ron DeSantis blasted President Biden's student debt relief program. He's just another entrant in the "nothing so stupid that the Republicans won't say it" contest. We established publicly funded public schools 170 years ago to educate our people. From How Stuff Works, quote, Massachusetts passed the first compulsory school laws in 1852. New York followed the next year, and by 1918, American children were required to attend at least elementary school. Close quotes. From Question-Answer.io, quote, by 1918, all U.S. states had some sort of mandatory attendance law for a high school, close quote. Each level of education became necessary for the welfare of our nation and for individuals to be ready for the challenges of our rapidly changing life and world. We funded schools publicly then, as now, because both we, the public, and our nation benefit. Ignorance just doesn't work well for our country. The world has progressed, and much of what it takes now to succeed simply cannot be supplied solely by a K-12 education. Ever finer, more advanced skills continue to be required. But we're late coming to the realization that we must publicly fund college just as we do public grade schools and high schools. Here's an example of why that's true. We graduate about 70,000 engineers annually. China graduates about 600,000, and India graduates about 350,000. They are both dramatically out-educating their young compared to us. We're in a global competition, and we will remain unprepared to compete and win as long as we continue to refuse to fully educate our citizens for today's world and tomorrow's. Keeping our people unprepared would be a huge economic and national security mistake. Doubt that? Read the linked article in the written post in this section. And recognizing that student debt relief and public funding of colleges and universities necessarily mean a redistribution of wealth, the haves will be required to subsidize the education of both the haves and the have-nots. Everyone else will have to pitch in too. That brings us to the never-ending conflict over wealth redistribution, which traces its angry origin at least as far back as the Civil War. And that brings us to the next section, this Gallup moment. Check the graph in the written post from Gallup's This Week in Charts, and you'll have no difficulty seeing the massive shift to public approval for heavy taxes on the rich to finance the commons, which importantly benefits our poor and middle class with schools, roads, and so forth. I suspect this change in public attitude has been accelerated by the past 50 years of legislation favorable to the rich and which penalizes the rest of us. The change may also be traced to the lack of enforcement of laws to prohibit rich guy favoritism. Here's an example. Only one guy went to prison for the fraud and deceit of the George W. Bush financial meltdown of 2008. Then there are all the massive trickle-down tax breaks, about 85% of which benefited already rich people, not you and me. You're right, that isn't fair. So the rich have benefited enormously for decades, for generations really, while the rest of us just muddled by. It seems that now over half of we Americans think that rich people should pony up their fair share for the benefit of all of us. Imagine that! Next section, the IRS and probably not you. On August 26th, German Lopez wrote in the morning newsletter of the New York Times, opining that on the Biden announcement about increasing the number of IRS agents and resources. He wrote, quote, Kari Lake, the Republican candidate for Arizona governor, tied the increase in IRS agents to the FBI's search of Donald Trump's Mar-a-Lago home and warned, quote, "Not a single one of us is safe," close quotes. I sure hope she's right, if by safe she means protected from being audited and indicted for tax evasion. I don't want anyone to be safe from that. While squatting in the Oval Office for 4 years, Trump dramatically reduced IRS resources in a stunning effort to protect himself and his rich buddies from scrutiny. That worked. Now Biden is working to restore the agency to a level where it can actually do its job. Got a problem with that, Kari Lake? We can fix your problem by defeating you in November. Go back to your hollowhead TV gig. Next, COVID Corner. COVID continues to rear its ugly head and promises to keep doing that until all the unvaccinated people either get vaccinated or die. It's just that simple. You can find the new cases chart and the death total chart in the written post. These are new cases per day averaged over 10 days. We're still reporting nearly 100,000 new cases every day. And that number doesn't include the cases identified via home test and those who never get diagnosed, the ones who just tough it out. Nearly 500 of our fellows are dying every day from COVID. Almost every one of those 500 had refused to be vaccinated. Some have religious objections. Got that. But some just refuse as a demonstration of their stubbornness, masked in a mantle of self-identified freedom. And some refuse to be protected because they believe the cruel and evil lies about both the disease and the vaccine that have been crammed down their throats since COVID was identified and then vaccines became available. Regardless of the why of their intransigence, our vaccine refusers are overburdening our medical professionals and institutions and are walking super spreaders who endanger the rest of us. I gotta wonder whatever happened to promote the general welfare and concern for others and our freedom not to be infected by stubborn people. All right, next section. Everything's okay now. Following the virulent Republican anti-abortion campaign of fear and moral outrage over the past 49 years, the extremist Supreme Court killed Roe, and now everything is just great for Republicans. Wait, it's not? The national outrage over Republicans ending rights and promising to end still more has caused Democratic voter registrations to double those of Republicans and has caused Kansas to declare there's nothing wrong with it. They defeated the extremist minority, killing the anti-choice state constitution amendment by 18 points. The midterm election is just 69 days away, and an anti-abortion position is threatening to be an anti-get-elected certainty for Republicans. What's an extremist, hair-on-fire, Trumpy MAGA candidate to do? Well, they figured it out. Republican candidates are removing anti-abortion everything from their websites, their campaign literature, and their campaign stops, hoping you won't remember it was there. They haven't changed their toxic minority position, and they still want to force their medieval ways onto the majority of us, and they're just as authoritarian as before, but they think you're dumb enough to forget who they are and what they stand for now that they ditched the evidence. See? Everything's okay now. Finally, all of this happened over just the past few days. This list doesn't include the Donald documents crimes and his threat to our national security, extremist violence, mass shootings, stupid Ted Cancun Cruz, or Lindsay Weathervane Graham statements. It omits Doug Mastriano, Herschel Walker, and Dr. Oz inanities, billionaire Barry Said's $1.6 billion gift to an ultra-conservative not-for-profit that avoided taxes, and. We didn't used to have so many unforced domestic errors. I'm Jag Altshuler.